Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
You are?
Hey.
You're like 50% crazy crab, 50%
How's it going?
Ben.
I am not the crazy crab. I am... I just vouch for him. I get him into clubs. And then I get kicked out of clubs for vouching for that fucker.
I could see being the guy that vouches for somebody to get him in the club, and then that person's so cool, they're like, well, we don't fucking want this dork here, and they'd kick me out, but the person I vouched for is still in.
If I ever got vouched for and brought into a place that was like way too cool for me, you better believe I would run into the bathroom and come out in a fucking shitty baseball mascot costume. And be like, you shouldn't have done it. Now I'm in here.
I'll make you pay. Oh no, that sounds too mass shootery. Yeah.
That's the thing. I would get lit up on the spot. Cops would just be like, "Woo woo, he's a murderer."
I don't know. See, I've got that thing where, like, if anytime somebody, like, I can't even say vouches for because I don't know that that's ever happened. But anytime anybody's just like, "Oh yeah, Steve, he's a good guy," and you're like, "No, I'm not." It's like, I don't know. I don't know how to accept like even a mild compliment. So it's more like, no, just say I'm an ass. I'm comfortable with that. Like,
yeah. I mean, that is something we have in common. Is very self-deprecating, but I'm also outwardly deprecating to you. So like, if somebody says you're a good guy, link me in that convo on Twitter, and I'll set them straight.
Yeah.
I'll be like, listen.
Negative vouch.
I have 10 years worth of podcasts that say you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah, like what's the opposite of a wingman? Like,
just a fucking saboteur.
I can picture something awful happens and I'm like single and I'm in a bar in the middle of Ohio and like I try to flirt with a girl and you just show the fuck up out of nowhere.
Absolutely, dude. Like that. I have maybe 2 friends in my life who I'm like supportive and like, yeah, he's a great dude, and unfortunately you're not one of those friends.
No, I wouldn't expect to be.
You're like my other friends who I do everything to fuck over.
But those are the true friends, right? Like,
well, no. I mean, like if you're with a girl and she more importantly than you, I think she needs to know that you hang out with a piece of shit like me. Who will throw you under the bus so fast? Yeah.
I think that's always why.
Not really. Me and all my friends are like, I'm exaggerating because none of us talk to girls. we're 30 and we're still very scared.
And if one did, dumb. Like you'd. Yeah, like even if one of your friends did show up with a girl, you'd be still that whole like I can't talk to girls thing would kick in, so you couldn't go.
I would just
throw them under the bus. You'd just be like,
yeah, it would not go well. Like I again, it's really sad. I'm in my 30s. I haven't actually tried it, but if I approached a girl in a bar, I feel like I would panic and just start like showing her crazy crap pictures. And just freak her the fuck out. Like, look, isn't he weird?
Honestly, given the stories I hear from women online, that might actually be the best possible move.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever like one of the things when I haven't been to like a bar just to like hang out and drink in years and years, but one of my things I used to love when you were at a bar was just kind of sitting back and like watching the creepy ass guys like hit on, like I've literally heard guys really come up and just be like, hey, yeah, I mean, I've literally heard them come up to a complete stranger and be like, hey, nice tits. And it's like, okay, like you're about to stab her in the parking lot when she says no.
Yeah,
like, get the fuck out of here. What?
Yeah. There's something, even when they're good about it, there's something about the game of like flirting that just like really is like the most douchey thing in the world to me, because it's like everybody knows the score, like everybody knows what you're trying to do, and you don't actually care because it's fucking 11:30 on a Friday night and you're not in it. You're only physically interested in her.
Right.
And the way you're talking to her is just like it just oozes out of everything you say.
Yeah, it's like you're looking for that secret code to say they're just the right thing to get the one thing you want.
And to me, it's just it wastes so much fucking time. Because if she's already made up her mind about you, like want it good for better or for worse. She might be into it, but it's just as casual as you're approaching it. So like having to like watch people do this awkward dance is like it
was easy for me because I would just walk into the bar and you'd hear every woman there like pause, look up, and go, "Nope."
Yeah, totally, and I just it sounds like incredibly nerdy, reserved fucking computer geek asshole of me, which I am. But to me, it's just like I wish this shit was streamlined. And turns out there are dating apps for that. And people are like, yeah, let's cut the shit. Let's hook up. You might get trapped in a cage when you try to hook up. But, we take that chance for the sake of expediency.
Dating profile just says, I do drive a van. I haven't murdered anybody in it yet.
I will not put you in a cage. Please do not put me in a cage. And let's see what happens. Dating with Ben.
Yeah. I like it. That's better than like all the YouTube shit I always get served because I'm a male.
We're getting close to episode 200. By the time we get there, we might decide enough is enough with this format, and I'll give you romantic advice every week.
That would be a really good show, I think.
I would love to do a dating call-in show with a guy like me who's never been on a date. I think that would be really good. I think I could really help people not do what I've done for 30 years.
Yeah, but you'd have to just like make up advice though, like not just be like, don't do this because this is what I do. You'd have to just be like, yeah, what women really like is when you take the straw out of your drink and stick it in their ear and blow
and play it like a flute.
I'm kind of picturing the like ladies man skits from Saturday Night Live because I kind of always got that like, but I don't know if you watch.
I know
if you're old enough
about.
Because they're
I
old,
remember a time when SNL was the complete worst shit.
That was kind of that in that era though, where it was like starting to be like, why are we watching this?
Yeah.
And
Ladies Man was that was Tim Meadows, right?
Yeah.
So he was still good. He was always
like it was. I think the very kind of start of the like where not every episode was like, holy shit, that was great. But they were still mostly
has to be like the most underappreciated comic actor of that era of SNL.
I know.
Like talk about a guy who like he is one of the funniest. His role in Walk Hard is one of the best fucking roles ever, and like. The fact that dude's always in like these little like brief roles where you're like, is that Tim Meadows? Is a crime.
I know, especially because he's not only hilarious, but he's just so into those guys that's like instantly likable on screen. Like,
yeah,
I don't.
He played a cannibal on I think it was, what's that show on Fox? Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or some shit.
Yeah, with Adam Sandberg or whatever.
Adam Sandberger. Yeah, he was like a cannibal serial killer, and he was like really friendly and shit. And he was just like, yeah, put it there, and like high five you, and then he would like grab you and try to eat you. Super likable.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should start the show.
Probably, yeah.
This is the Non-Essential Podcast. Every week we tell each other stories. You might be saying to yourself, Ben, another creepypasta? Are you fucking kidding me? Yes, I am. I actually have a topic this week.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I had money writing that. No.
But, you can imagine I made it up. It sounds made up in some ways.
So it is made up.
Because the first sentence is the year is 900 something, which is how hard I tried putting the notes together.
You know what, though? I appreciate that because the last one that I did and we've made fun of it like as we do it, and I just do it because I kind of think it's like I do it because I think it's stupid. But then I'm like, I think I'm done with this. Where I always would start like, it was 1985 in Brooklyn, Massachusetts. So and so was born on a farm to Linda and Bob, and that kind of thing. Like nobody fucking cares.
Yeah. So watch me do that right now. I didn't write the fucking year down. To be fair, I couldn't quite get a hard number. I think it was like 940 to 950 something. This starts.
There's no excuse for not getting that right. There was such good records taken in the 900s.
Well, and we'll talk about that a little bit because we've touched on that with history stories before where, it's not the most authentic. Always. It was like whoever chronicled it sometimes had a bone to pick.
In fairness, they're still usually more accurate than a Fox News story. Hey. Zing!
I love political humor. And lung cancer.
Yes. They're both wonderful.
So the year is 900 something. I don't fucking know. And a guy named Octavian or Octavianus was born to Duke Alberic II of Spoleto, who was either the legitimate fucking ruler of Rome or a self-proclaimed Prince of Rome who did a lot of conquering and shit. I imagine you could probably find like a full story about this dude's dad from how he got put in charge of Rome.
Well, and if his name's Spoleto and he didn't invent a pasta dish,
he was from Spoleto.
Oh, from Spoleto.
Of Spoleto.
Okay. Of Spoleto. I'm going to start introducing myself. I am Steve of Spoleto.
I am Ben of Alfredo.
Yeah. They'd look at my body and be like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, totally. There's no clear confirmation on who Octavian's mother was because the people who chronicled his life did not particularly like the guy by the end. So I guess they thought if they just like left the mother blank in the history books, people would just assume his dad shit him out at some point.
He just shot him out fully formed instead of a sperm.
Imagine you crapped a turd and that turd rose up and said, "Dad."
I was thinking he was like jacking it to Playboy or so, whatever the Roman equivalent was at the time. And
it was sex. The Roman equivalent, they didn't need porn. Especially if you were in charge. More on that later. So the consensus had it down to two possibilities. Either Octavian's dad knocked up a concubine, which would have been kind of a scandal for a Roman leader, but probably happened all the time.
That's what's funny about that.
Or he knocked up Alda of Vienne, who Alberic married for the sake of a political alliance, who was also his stepsister, which also would have been a scandal and also probably would have been pretty common at the time.
Yeah, and today it's just...
And today there's a whole subsection on various websites devoted to the very idea. But yeah, nothing's ever totally defined. Octavian was born with high expectations. He was named after the personal name of Augustus Caesar, as well as an ancient Etruscan prince. Expectations to do what? Alberic didn't seem to know exactly what he wanted his son to be, but it needed to be big. Octavian was likely trained in the art of combat like most Roman aristocratic nobles. Not that I've read anywhere that he was a great warrior, but the point is he probably was a kid who probably should have read more. The general gist is he was basically a frat kid.
Yeah.
Fever would get Duke Alberic in 954. Before his death, he made his Roman nobles swear at St. Peter's altar that his son would be named Pope at the first vacancy. So
that's a hell of a choice.
It's a fucking crazy jump. And all these nobles really loved Alberic, so they agreed. Even though nothing that Octavian had done with his father ever connected remotely with that kind of position and authority. It would be like the
He's
story.
never like actually been to church. He's just like,
I mean, only in so much as everyone's been to church. It would be like, hey, Ben, be Pope. You know, it's
it sounds like he would be like, dude, that's a pretty sweet hat. I'll take it.
I would do it. Absolutely, I would do it. But it would be
totally hide a bong in there.
But it would be like the story of nearly every American politician. Somebody totally not qualified for absolute executive power. Octavian was named the 130th Pope after the Pope's death in November of the following year, 955. Octavian then adopted the apostolic name of John the 12th. So we had this approximately 18-year-old kid who wasn't particularly spiritual, in charge of all spiritual and civil matters in Rome. He had his father's authority and prestige as well, so he was the Pope, and he ran fucking everything, you know, which, I mean, the Pope did back then, but there was a division of labor that he didn't have to adhere to anymore.
Right.
And instead he created his own where he divided all labor to everyone else and just started having a lot of sex.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're 18 and given literally
total power,
the keys to both. Yeah.
So he had his father's authority and prestige, and he was also, you know, the fucking voice of God for people. And all he ever learned growing up was basically some fighting and mostly debauchery. So I'm on board. I hope you are too.
Finally, a good pope.
Finally, a guy I can get behind. And he might make me get behind him.
When they were electing him, they're like, isn't it supposed to be, you know, white or black smoke, whatever the fuck it is? And they're like, why is all the smoke coming out of the chimney? It's purple.
Jesus Christ. John predictably allowed Rome to slide into decay as he gambled and fucked his way through his days of supreme power. The Lateran Palace became one big brothel where John would just basically fuck married women. He would name his mistresses, one being his father's, so, you know, hand-me-downs.
Again, a popular category.
Totally. One being his father's. He would name them governors of cities and just give them treasure and shit. And
so he was a feminist. He was all for
not really.
Women and no.
I'm about to break that myth in one sentence. And even with the hundreds of women he was probably fucking, John still found time to kidnap and force himself on female pilgrims.
Cool.
So he was a piece of shit. Don't let all the sex and failure fool you.
I mean, up to that point, he seemed like an upstanding dude.
Yeah. When John basically turned Rome into his personal party city for the Lord, Berengar of Ivrea had succeeded John's step-grandfather, Hugh of Provence, as the king of Italy. And Berengar saw a bankrupt, weak Rome and decided he was coming to fuck it up. John knew he was pretty much fucked in a one-on-one fight and pleaded for Otto of Saxony, king of the Germans, to come to Rome and protect him. John saw this as getting another big-name bodyguard while he still ran the show, as much as John ever ran the show in Rome. It wouldn't quite work out that way. Otto was approximately 30 years older than John, and basically everything in a ruler back then that John wasn't. Otto spent years in charge of Germany, successfully defeating every enemy the state had during his reign. He was described as the image of piety and chivalry. Otto sought to resurrect the empire of Charlemagne, and happily took the job when John offered him Charlemagne's imperial crown in exchange for helping him fight off Berengar. He received the crown and promised to protect the independence of the Papal States from Naples to Venice, and that any land he claimed in battle from Berengar would return to John. For as incompetent as John was as a leader, this move of, desperation actually would be a key military move that would cement the Roman Empire for technically another 850 years until Napoleon disbanded it.
See, he was a genius. He was just hiding it.
Yeah. He wouldn't really get to enjoy that empire. But he would for a few months. After getting the crown, Otto actually started to have to get to know John. And Otto, now emperor basically, began to tear down John for the immature dipshit that he was, and scolded him for how he had conducted himself when he was expected to lead people. John put on a good show at first of trying to be pope during this time, but he was mostly just relieved when Otto went off to go face Berengar in northern Italy in 962.
He called up all 8,000 of his mistresses. It's like, hey, Dad's out of the house.
Hey, fucking, we can fuck up the palace again. He didn't retain shit from any of Otto's lectures. He basically thought he could tell Otto everything he wanted to hear, have him fight his battles, and keep fucking and gambling. And to be fair, he made it to however old he was now, and everybody let him mostly do that. Otto would get reports out at the battlefield of how the Palace of Lateran was, once previously the shelter of saints, was now reduced to a brothel, which, John and I would both probably object to. A brothel can be a beautiful place and full of beautiful souls who charge reasonable prices.
Yeah, and it can lift the people up because it's a commodity.
Sex work gets so shamed, and there's nothing more worthy of sainthood than, a sex worker with a heart of gold.
Right.
Not that that's what John was running, but, you have to start somewhere. Otto initially thought John would grow out of this if more people around him set the example of how rulers should conduct themselves. And then he heard John was hanging out with Aldebert, the son of King Berengar, their fucking opponent. John had decided he probably picked too good of an ally in Otto, because Otto continued to win battles in territory and he continued to gain power kind of independently from Rome. And John didn't like that. Even though John was the one who gave him supreme fucking power for basically being his bodyguard.
Yeah, but I could see it wouldn't be the first time or the last time in history where somebody was like, oh, I need your help. And then they realize, fuck, we have no chance of this person, if they change their mind, is going to fuck us up too.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, he didn't want fucking daddy lecturing him about how to not run his state.
Well, and making him look bad.
Yeah. Although that is another thrilling twist coming down the road. John entered negotiations with the Byzantine Emperor in Constantinople, Aldebert and Berengar, to essentially join forces in now stopping Otto. Otto was pissed at John's betrayal, to say the least, but not actually weakened by it. So he headed back to Rome with his fucking massive army, which was still very much his. And upon word that Otto approached the city, John basically took all the vices he possibly could, money, women, fucking booze, and ran off with Aldebert to Tivoli. He was like, oh, yoink. Fuck, he's coming. Dad's home.
I never thought this would happen.
Dad's home and there's fucking sex everywhere. Hide.
Somebody pissed on the rug. I'll never live that down.
Flashes back. It's just Otto just pissing on the carpet. Not even part of the party. Just him alone in a room.
Not drunk. Just
stone cold sober.
Yeah.
Otto called a council of bishops, cardinals, deacons, and clergymen to discuss John's crimes, and over an 8-year rule, it was clear this dude wasn't growing out of this shit like Otto hoped. Now, it's worth noting, some of these crimes are more like church rules rather than, real, crimes against humanity type shit. But there were plenty of crimes against humanity, too. Again, John's a fucking animal.
Yeah, and if you want to kind of like disqualify something, it's like, well, they're just church rules. I'm like, well, the ultimate crime is you're in charge of church rules. If you're going to break them, just do away with the rule. Like,
fair point. So there's a lot, but something to note. John was alleged to have ordained a deacon in a stable, which was apparently a big no-no, but I don't know when we got to be so much better than horses that we can't do business in stables. John received money to make them bishops. Yeah, that never happened again.
Nope.
Or before. He hunted in public, which is a classic old school church idea, which is doing the thing is fine if you hide it.
Right.
He blinded his confessor. I couldn't get much details about that. I wanted to know what exactly happened there, because that could be throwing sand in the eye or that could be ripping someone's eyes out.
They were just doing flaming shots together.
He killed a cardinal after castrating him. Seems pretty extreme. He set houses on fire, riding around Rome in armor. Which, that's just a party going to. Yeah. Same shit happened when the Lakers won, like, a third championship.
And they were even, like, on a horse-drawn chariot. It was weird.
Totally.
Like...
he toasted to the devil, which is, like, day one Pope shit, which is, like, don't do that.
Right.
Even if it is hilarious, because the people around you aren't going to laugh.
Well, in your presence they might, because they know you'll decapitate them if they don't.
Maybe that's why the dude lost his fucking nuts. Whilst gambling, he would ask for assistance from pagan gods instead of the Christian God, as if that, like, offended the Christian God, as if he's up there like, why didn't he ask me for help? I would have helped. Like, it's gambling. Like, God don't give a fuck.
Well, I like the idea that it's like he's murdering, raping, like, just vice left and right, but that's not, I frown on that. He worshipped he asked for a pagan god. Yeah. Fuck, that's one step.
Maybe he just knew, like, Jupiter was better at blackjack, Well,
right. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for assistance with, like, a vice like gambling, you probably wouldn't want to ask a true and just God. You'd want to ask the God that's like, hey, like, I'm into some seedy shit.
So Otto wrote John a letter after this council, asking him to return to Rome and answer for his crimes, and even promised that no harm would come to him.
Okay.
But John...
I was gonna say, that's a wrong approach. Be like, look, we just bought a couple kegs, and the women that delivered it, you should see them. They're pretty hot. He'd be there and, like... Yeah, he'd be right there.
Hey, I combined the brothel with the stable. Check it out. That would probably have got him back. But instead, John wrote back in a kind of, maybe understandably paranoid backlash. We hear you wish to make another pope. If you do, I excommunicate you by Almighty God. And you have no power to ordain no one or celebrate Mass.
Checkmate, motherfucker.
Yeah. The bishops had tough guy Otto out on their side, though, and basically just mocked John's letter and how the fucker could barely write. After a second request to appear was ignored, John was excommunicated, and Otto's candidate, Leo VIII, was elected as the new pope. What may surprise you, or maybe not, since we've lived through a Trump presidency now, is that many people supported John.
Yeah.
The people were really the
Well-
ones who decided who was Pope, and they did not like that this German guy came into their city and handpicked a dude to replace their incompetent, dumbass party Pope.
Here's the thing: is you get somebody like John Octavia. Was it Octavius? Octavia?
It was
whatever.
It was written two different ways. It was Octavian and Octavianus.
Okay.
Um,
But anyway, that
but he's
dude,
John now.
you get somebody like that, and they'll run the fucking country, not even like into the ground, like into oblivion. Like
Totally.
but
Like, they were fucked. They needed
the
all
thing
that.
is, all the other corrupt people realize that they can get away with their shit under that kind of rule, and they can benefit. And so if you don't care about the future and you just care about like your own short term, like, hey, I'm going to have fun with this too. Like those people do get a lot of support, which is sickening.
And in this case, but then it's like people who weren't even profiting. Because the common man, like, Rome was fucking broke because of John.
Well, and then the second part of that there is those people, it's like, oh, the country's going broke. It's like, but those people were already broke. So to them, it's not necessarily worse. Like
That's true, but it's also like it shows a lot about, this is just like an example of like kind of nationalism. Like,
yeah, that too.
a guy, it could happen in America. Like, if a French person came here and objectively made everybody's life better, there would still be at least half the country wanting to kill them
Because they're French.
Because they're French. It's there's no like reason to it. It's just like, that's our leader. Which was funny because the common man didn't actually like vote for the Pope. It was the nobles who picked John to be Pope, and then they just said, that's our man. But they liked him, and they did not like Otto's guy. And Roman citizens rebelled against Leo's election, and they were bloodily suppressed by Otto's forces. But Otto, now feeling secure, I guess, that Leo was established as in charge, had to return to fighting Berengar, and he was also being called back to Germany for other matters. As soon as Otto left the city, John, like a fucking rat, just ran. Like, it was almost like he was just outside the gate and like popped out of a bush and ran back in. He returned.
I wasn't cowering, people. I was taking a leak behind that tree.
But, say what we will about John, but he was good at making friends, so he didn't come back alone. He didn't come back with a force strong enough to fight off Otto's army, but he had enough to take Rome back, especially with the support of the people. And he came back he left a spoiled little shit, and he came back a real fucking monster. And so, with his fucking friends and allies and a citizenry fucking crazy enough to miss the chaos he brought, he basically overhauled the fucking church and put everyone who testified against him on his own fucked up Inquisition level trial. Bishops and enemies of John had their tongues cut out. Hands and fingers were removed. Noses were sawed off. He had his own council basically undo everything that was decreed with Otto's, which is kind of weird because his council only had 30 members while Otto's had like 100 people saying like, we got to get rid of this John guy. Leo.
The vocal minority.
Yeah, totally. Leo turned out to be the incompetent puppet that people thought he was, because he fucking ran as soon as John returned.
Well, I don't know if I call that incompetent. I think that sounds like the right move in that situation. I like my tongue and fingers.
If you're a loser, if you're the fucking Pope and you're left in charge, fucking what the hell? How do you not put your foot down? It's like, even just the threat of Otto should have been enough to keep shit in line. But Leo was a bitch. So he ran and tucked his tail between his legs and ran back to Otto, I guess, and just said, yeah, I couldn't do it. John was once again in charge of Rome. Otto was not too thrilled about this, but he was extraordinarily busy. Like, you have to kind of remember, like, he was already running a country before all this shit with Rome started. Apparently, fucking and drinking and being a general fuck up, again, put John in a good mood, and he even tried to reconcile with Otto after this. But John's triumphant return would only last a few months, and him and Otto would never fully patch things up. Much like his birth, the details of John's death are subject to biases and speculation based off how embarrassing the person telling the story wants to make it. Some say he died of a stroke while exerting himself too much during sex. Others say he was beaten to death by the woman's husband after he found them together. Either way, Pope John died at 27.
Well, yeah, but he lived more in those 27 years than I think
Than
most
I have.
of us.
Yeah. Than I ever will. Interestingly, Otto and his son after him would try multiple times to reclaim Rome and never succeed. Because good leader, bad leader, it doesn't fucking matter. The people of Rome would rather die than let Otto or his bloodline control the city, and they would rebel every time. The parallels of historical fuck-ups with authority to what we have in our time is super depressing. That's the only moral I got out of this.
Yeah. It's like, I love how we always look to the leaders and be like, oh, you know, they go to the best schools and they have the most education. It's like, but they do the same fucking shit.
But they don't get
humanity
smarter.
is done.
You know,
No.
like, one, that's bullshit. Academia does not equate to intelligence.
Not at all.
I have met brilliant people who dropped out, and I have met the stupidest sons of bitches with doctorates. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But if you have shiny certificates, or you're just not even that, like, you know, we talk shit about like national politicians, but the fucking mayor of my city was a news anchor, and she's a fucking idiot.
Yeah,
like,
because it's almost worse at the local level because very few people pay attention to like the local politics. So as soon as somebody like that just knows a lot of people in a town.
This idiot read a prompter and thanked a guy for telling her the weather. You know, like, she's not qualified to lead.
That's the thing. In fairness, you could be a news anchor and have qualifications to be a politician, but being a news anchor in and of itself are not those qualifications. You're going to have to show me why you're qualified, but it never happens. It's
My
just
point
like
is,
people
you're no more qualified than I am.
Right.
And I'm not running, so you shouldn't run.
Well, I'm not running anywhere. Running sucks, but
that joke's for John. We miss you, buddy.
I've had people over the years say that I should get into politics. I'm like, fuck no, I would never last.
I would still be sabotaging you. I would run onto the stage after you gave a big speech and like just shoot everything down as bullshit.
Yeah.
You just hear me like 100 yards away in a massive presidential crowd, just like, he's lying to you.
Yeah, well, that's not the right threat because every politician's lying to everybody. That's what they do. You gotta be like, listen to his show. He's not entertaining. And people be like, oh, fuck, I'm not voting for him.
I don't know. If you were dumb enough to think like the Trump presidency would be funny, which I heard nothing but like that leading up to his election, like, you probably think our show's a gut buster. But anywho, that's the story. I'm fucking done. I'm done talking. Go to hell.
I got a letter I got to write to Rome being like, hey, can you call me when there's a new opening? Because that job sounds pretty cool.
My dad says I would be good at this. Can I be Pope? I think I would be a pretty good Pope. Like, I don't have sex. Hey, I'm already better than John.
Yeah, and I don't gamble, so
It is worth noting, like, there was no vow of celibacy shit back then. The Pope could fuck as much as they wanted. And
well, that
did.
was the whole reason to be Pope. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they still do. It's it's just that, it's again, like, now that it's this thing where you're expected to hide it. But it's like they wore robes. Yeah, it's so you could take it off all at once.
I don't know. Are the popes supposed to be celibate now? Like, I know that you always get that, like, priests and stuff.
You know how
fucking.
I'm sorry. You know how fucking pissed I would be if I was a Catholic priest and the fucking head honcho didn't have to make the same vow I did. That's bullshit.
Well, that's what I was gonna. I didn't know if Catholic priests are supposed to be or not, because not all priests like have the celibacy thing. But I don't know like which denominations do and don't. I am very uneducated with the Catholic religion. All I know is anytime I've had to go to a wedding, people that are Catholic, it's like, oh crap.
I wouldn't be surprised if the rules have changed back and forth over the years. But in ancient Rome, when we were fucking, we were all fucked up at the House of Rome.
That's kind of why the Pope hat is shaped like a penis. That's
you actually take it off. It's a giant cock.
Now I'm thinking it's flashbacks to, I probably told this story, but I was lucky enough to get to go to the last Browns home game before they moved to Baltimore. And there was multiple people, but there was one in our section. Art Modell was the owner that moved the team. And there was just this guy walking around in a full-size foam penis outfit with a sign that just said Modell is a, with an arrow pointing to himself. And when
it should just be a t-shirt that says I am Modell.
and they moved in, what was it, 96, 95, 96? So I would have been like 13 or 14. So that was the funniest shit in the world to like a 13-year-old. Like,
that's the funniest shit now.
Well, yeah.
It's way better than anything I could write.
But,
tune in next week when I just run around in a penis suit.
Now that I'm thinking about it, that might have been the Pope. Like, he flew in from Rome to let everybody know that Art Modell was a piece of crap for moving the team.
What if the Pope looked however your brain just like subconsciously needed to picture him?
That's one of his powers.
Well, it's like, it's how God presents himself to you.
Yeah.
And, like, I'd be all right with that.
Everybody else would be like, oh my God, it's the Pope. And I'd be like, why is there a cheeseburger riding around in this car?
It's weird. It talks through the hole at the time. I don't like it. He just keeps telling me to be good. That's a fucked up fever dream.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anywho, thanks for listening this week. Try again next week.
I can honestly say I learned more about Pope history tonight than I've learned the rest of my 40 years on this earth.
Then I will learn for the rest of the 40 years. There's actually probably a lot of fucked up weird popes out there. Like any position of authority. But they're hard to look up, so the next 40 years of creepypasta episodes. Enjoy!